Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today I just want to do a quick one because I've been getting some questions and comments about this, which I knew were coming. MSTR versus Bitcoin, right? So it seems like MSTR, and of course, under the MSTR category, Misty, MSTE from Harvest, right? The MSTR MicroStrategy, now strategy, covered call ETFs fall into this category versus IBIT or Bitcoin itself. It seems like there's been a bit of a divergence recently, and MSTR is underperforming Bitcoin or IBIT, right? If we look at the last month, for example, you see that strategy is down 17.47%, and IBIT, which just tracks the price point of Bitcoin, is up 1%. So it seems like MSTR is underperforming uh, Bitcoin. So if you're trying to understand why that is, well, first of all, you have to remember a few things. The strategy is, it holds a lot of Bitcoin, but it's trading at a big premium. But I'm personally not a super expert in any of this, right? I understand the basic concepts. So I actually found a video today of this guy, Joe Burnett, which I've watched a few of his videos. I really like them pertaining to Bitcoin. And he explains it in pretty good fashion in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So let's listen in together.
Why does MSTR not perfectly track the price of Bitcoin? In fact, why does it sometimes underperform Bitcoin if it's supposed to be amplified Bitcoin? For example, Bitcoin just made a new all-time high, but MSTR has not made a new all-time high since November 2024. I think some people misunderstand what Michael Saylor and other Bitcoin treasury companies are building when it comes to creating an intelligently leveraged Bitcoin position. MSTR is not designed to track the price of Bitcoin on a daily basis. There are 2x Bitcoin ETFs, such as BITX, that aim to do this by amplifying Bitcoin's price every day.
So that BitX would be like one of those daily reset 2x leverage from volatility shares. That's what he's talking about here.
Products offer a very tight short-term correlation, but tend to be poor long-term investments due to short-term volatility decaying long-term returns. Strategy is an intelligently leveraged long-duration Bitcoin position. The company takes on long-duration, low-interest rate credit and uses it to buy more Bitcoin, pairing long-duration credit instruments with a long-duration asset. This approach is not designed to track Bitcoin on a daily, monthly, or even quarterly basis. It is designed to amplify Bitcoin's returns over multiple years or decades. When people complain that MSTR has not tracked Bitcoin perfectly or is down over a 9-month period, they are missing the nature of what strategy actually is. With long duration credit, Bitcoin treasury companies often trade at a premium or even a discount to their underlying Bitcoin net asset value, or mNAV. This may be from the market's.
So that's an important thing to understand, the mNAV. So if you go to strategies dashboard, which I have bookmarked, by the way, I think everyone should have this bookmarked. You'll see something called the mNAV. So this is the relation of the Bitcoin value that strategy holds, which is now over 628,000 Bitcoin, versus the actual market cap, or you could say, which is influenced by the stock price. Right, so you see that the market cap of strategy is 118 billion, but it only has 74 billion worth of Bitcoin, which means it's 1.59. It's trading in relation to its Bitcoin holdings, its value, at a 59% premium, you could say, right? And you hear a lot of arguments of people online saying, "Oh, strategy is trading at such a big premium in relation to their Bitcoin holdings." That's what they're talking about. So right now it's at 1.59. This actually seems pretty high for most of you, but it's actually a lot lower. It's been going down. It's lower than it has been.
Expectation for future BTC yield, an underlying valuable business, or general market sentiment towards leveraged Bitcoin. If someone bought MSTR 9 months ago at an mNAV of over 3x and that premium contracted to 1.6x, they could easily underperform Bitcoin simply because the premium compressed. However, the underlying capital structure may remain roughly the same, an intelligently leveraged long-duration Bitcoin position. Over the long run, if Bitcoin outperforms the company's fixed income liabilities and the mNAV premium remains stable, MSTR could outperform Bitcoin, and it likely would. However, buying these companies at a premium carries the risk that the premium can contract. which can hurt returns even when Bitcoin is performing well. It is important for investors to understand that if they want to own an intelligently leveraged Bitcoin position, they must be aware that they might be paying a premium for it. There are other Bitcoin treasury companies with similar underlying capital structures that may not be trading at much of a premium, but they still operate with a large balance sheet of Bitcoin paired with long duration debt at low interest rates. So as mNAV premiums can expand or contract, Bitcoin treasury companies are not designed as short-term, perfectly correlated leveraged Bitcoin positions. They are long-duration leveraged Bitcoin positions. A good way to think about them is to zoom out, look multiple years ahead, and operate from the thesis that Bitcoin may outperform fixed income. If that thesis is correct, Bitcoin treasury companies using long-duration credit can be extremely compelling opportunities. However, expecting their short-term performance to perfectly match Bitcoin's daily price movements is a fundamental misunderstanding of what they are and how they work.
Fantastic video. So the main takeaway is you got to look at it from a long-term perspective, I believe, right? You absolutely have to look at it from a long-term perspective. So if we actually look at it from a long-term perspective, if we look at, there's a charts here. So Bitcoin standard era, this is, I believe, since my strategy started buying Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which I believe is 2020 or maybe 2021. You see that MSTR, regardless of the short term, is still outperforming Bitcoin by a lot. And even if we do 1 year, even in the last 1 year, it's still beating IBIT, right? Or BTC. In the short term, it is not. And if we look at the 3 month, it is not, right? If we look at the stock charts as well, we kind of see that in the last month, the last 3 months. So it's very important to understand what you're investing in. It's a long-term, and MSTR is basically trying to take on a long-term, very intelligent leverage for the long term to amplify its return. So bookmark this this page here as well. So you see right now it's at 1.6. Another thing I highly recommend you watch is the latest Q2 results. If you have a lot of MST or MSTR or MST or whichever one you chose, MSII from Rex, doesn't matter. You're still investing in strategy, okay? So you got to understand what the hell strategy is and what it's doing. So if I found that I watched the whole thing, it was absolutely amazing. I highly recommend you watch the second quarter results. And Michael Saylor goes through their plan of how they're going to use intelligent leverage, what all these products are, Strife and Stretch and Strike and Stride, etc., how they're using them, what they are. And there's also a lot of projections talking about, well, if Bitcoin's average annual return is 20% versus 30%, if we're using this much leverage or this much leverage, what's the possibility, what could happen to MSTR? So there's a whole presentation about it. They've also updated, I took a screenshot of this here, where in relation to that very important mNAV, right, which is 1.6 right now, they kind of changing their way how they're going to be buying Bitcoin. So, above 4x mNAV, which means it's basically at a 400% premium, you have their plan of what they're going to be doing. So right now we're here, below 1.5x, right? We're at 1.6. So they're not going to be issuing MicroStrategy shares like they've been doing, except to pay interest on debt obligations, and to fund preferred equity dividends. But this is very interesting because if it's below 1x NAV, which means that this number here is going to be bigger than this number here, it obviously makes sense that they're going to be borrowing money to rebuy MSTR shares, because MSTR would be basically trading at a discount to its Bitcoin value. So I highly recommend you watch this presentation, because my opinion, I think that Michael Saylor, his team, is very, very intelligent people, and they're kind of evolving a little bit their strategy to get the most intelligent long-term leverage. And I highly recommend it. Again, I'm not a super expert in this, but again, my MSTR, MST, MS, whatever, is not going to track Bitcoin exactly. Okay, you have to be aware of that. It is a higher volatility, higher risk bet that is really designed for the long term. Okay, so again, so people who are watching MSTR price versus Bitcoin price every single day, I think you're missing the point. We got to think long-term investors. And also you could diversify your Bitcoin strategy, right? This is why I don't only have MSTE, I also have HBIX and HBTE also from Harvest. So I have 3 Bitcoin exposures, all with cover calls and 25% leverage because I'm an income investor first, always. But I have HBIX, which is just the Bitcoin, which is probably going to be, well, not probably, is the lowest bet. It's like buying the gold. Then you have HBTE, which is Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin related companies in there. So in there, you actually have Strategy, you have 10% in Bitcoin and IBIT, but you have Galaxy and Riot and other Bitcoin miners and different Marathon, Riot, things like that, which is kind of like, I look at it as gold producers. And then you have MSTR or MSTE, MSTY, whatever it is, which is kind of like a leveraged long-term bet on Bitcoin. And of course, it's the highest risk. It has the highest volatility, right? So typically volatility and risk, higher volatility typically means higher risk, but you could get higher reward. So personally, I really am a big fan of Michael Saylor. I think they're doing pretty good stuff here. They're evolving the way they're taking the leverage. I believe I look at it as a 10-year plus investment opportunity, but of course I'm still diversified with those 3 Bitcoin exposures. So it's really up to you to decide what you're most comfortable with. Allocate a percentage to Bitcoin. First of all, that would be my number one piece of advice, whether you're comfortable with 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% like me, maybe more. And then decide, okay, well, let me put half of it in Bitcoin, half of it in Strategy, or 33, 33, 33 between those 3 exposures, right? In the US, you kind of have the same thing. You have 1 million Strategy cover call ETFs. You have many Bitcoin cover call ETFs. You even have crypto related company cover call ETFs. YieldMax has one, Rex has one. I cover them every month, right near the end. The Bitcoin stuff on the picks of the month. Well, it's not called picks of the month anymore, but the high yield cover call ETF landscape. I do an episode for the US one in Canada. In the US one near the end, I cover the Strategy, the crypto, and the Bitcoin cover call ETFs that you could choose from. You have a lot more choice on the US stock market and on the Canadian market. But I feel those are really 3 exposures you could think about when you're trying to get exposure to Bitcoin. So hopefully this video was informative for you. Again, bookmark this dashboard. There's a lot of cool stuff here, a lot of charts where you could look at the volatility of MSTR versus the Magnificent Seven and other stuff. If you look at charts, you'll see the returns, the 1-year return of MSTR versus everything else. So it's pretty cool stuff here. And I highly recommend, if you really want to do a deep dive and understand what Strategy is doing, it's a masterclass of education. Watch the second quarter 2025 financial results webinar. I watched the whole thing, and it goes into detail of how they're going to be going forward using that leverage. This is just a screenshot, but it's, Michael Saylor talks in there too. It's absolutely amazing. And if you like projections, price predictions, there's a lot related to MSTR in that presentation. So give me a thumbs up. I'll really appreciate it. Take care, everyone. See you next time.